We're so glad to hear from everybody tonight. Thank you, Tammy, for being here, and the team. I see you have your whole backup team here, so this is great. Robbie, did you want to say anything?
Just thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Thanks for the flexibility tonight. We were originally planning on taking you all out on a tour. It was going to be really fun until we saw it was going to be 91 degrees. And I thought, okay, that could make a really long night if we all get back and we're all super sweaty and exhausted before the meeting even starts. So we changed it. Thank you to the library for being flexible, and we'll turn it over to Tammy.
All right, we are happy to be here, not all hot and sweaty after a long tour outside. So good evening, councilors and Mayor Pace. I'm glad to be here and excited to have this opportunity to tell you what we're up to over in the library. So here's an overview of what we are. Let me just use the mouse. That's going to work better.
Thank you.
And now something's.
I broke the door. And somehow that also broke the screen, and yeah, we're good.
For those of you online, we're not getting a video feed for TVC-TV, and so we're straightening that out. So we just have a little tech issue. Here's your music. Do, 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 do.
We don't have a library theme song. Maybe we should add that to our list.
You could add that to, We're getting ready for the strategy. Yeah,
You know.
exactly.
That'd be great.
Councilor Alcaro online. Sure, it was amazing.
Oh, was it?
Is it still doing?
Was that you that I was talking about?
Okay. Got some hair in there.
The video feed is still live in Zoom. So Tammy, you could continue. This one just needs to be rebooted, so you could continue until this comes back up momentarily.
Okay, well, we can do that. I think you've all got it up on laptops except for Mayor Pace. I hope you can see
That's
across the room for a few minutes.
I can't.
Okay. So I'm going to start with just an overview of what we'll cover today, starting with who we are and what we do. We'll talk about our library locations, the programs and services that we offer, our structure and staffing, and our participation in WCCLS. We'll talk a little bit about how we're supported in terms of both oversight and outside financial support. We'll talk about the work we're doing to plan for our future. That includes our current state and strategic planning process, the WCCLS funding and governance project, and a move we're making towards collection centralization in a couple of years. I want to give you a little bit of context about the state and national library picture right now, some of the things that are happening there that may have an impact on us. And finally, talk to you a little bit about the library's funding structure and the upcoming countywide library levy. All right, is that working? There we go. Okay. So starting out with our, yay, thank you. Our libraries and service points. The biggest pictures here, of course, are of our two primary libraries, Brookwood Library and Shute Park. Brookwood functions in a bit as a regional library. It draws patrons from all over the county. It has a very large collection, ample spaces for patrons, and it's a hub for most of our staff, including those who plan for and deliver programs and do outreach and provide volunteer services for both libraries. And Shute Park, of course, is a busy community library that's in the heart of the Shute Park campus. It's in the Calle 10 neighborhood, and you can often hear more Spanish than English being spoken in this library, thanks in part to a staff that is largely bilingual. Patrons see this library as a part of the overall Shute Park campus and very much a part of that community. I have to share with you the comment that a child made to me last year at one of the community events here, where we were asking him what his favorite part of the library was. And he said his favorite part of the library was the pool. So he sees Shark. He sees Shark and the library as a joint thing that he really liked to go to. So he told us he liked to be there, but the pool was his favorite part. In the yellow boxes there, we have a couple of other service points. The Novel Branch is our vending machine over at Hidden Creek Community Center, stocked with a variety of collection items, including some fun things that you can take out and play with in the park, like hammocks and hacky sacks and things like that. And then the Library on the Loose, which is our mobile unit that brings our library out to community events and spaces. And then I put some smaller pictures there of a couple of other just touch points where we have an opportunity to meet our community in various places where they are. The story walks there are series of stories that are scattered around 3 currently and going to soon to be 4 parks in the community. Those are funded by our foundation and are a great way for families to engage in literacy activities and be in the outdoors together. And then the Tiny Branches, which are stocked with materials that are retired from library use. And we have a cadre of volunteers that go out and take care of those and maintain the collections that are in them, giving us just one more chance to give those materials life and get them out into the community and to seed a little bit of library presence into community spaces where there isn't a larger library building. So next up, I want to talk to you about the programs and services that we provide, starting with our collection. We have a collection that is one of the strongest in the Washington County area. It is large and it is diverse, and it reflects everyone in our community. We have more than 293,000 items in 17 languages. We have multiple formats, not just books, but all of the media formats, CDs, DVDs, downloadable items. We also, of course, have the Library of Things. So you can get everything from cake pans to radon detectors to musical instruments, and you can check them out from the library. That also includes our collection of adapted toys that are made for children with special needs. In addition to our physical collections, we have online collections of books and ebooks and downloadable audiobooks. These are provided primarily by WCCLS. And then we have a variety of online database resources that are also provided by WCCLS and the Oregon State Library. And I will point out that digital circulation in the last year was up more than 18%. So that's continuing a trend that's really began kind of early in the pandemic and has just continued to rise, that use of electronic collection materials. Patrons tell us that what matters most to them about their library is the collections. So next to our collections, patrons, of course, tell us that our staff and our spaces are the most important things that they use in the library. We are open 7 days a week, of course, and we've got staff there all of those hours providing welcoming and knowledgeable service, often bilingually. And they provide all kinds of assistance to use all of the resources that we have. So not just the materials in our spaces, but the 61 public computers that we offer for patrons who come in. Many of the patrons using those need a lot of help from our staff to navigate all the things that they are trying to do there. I know that you're aware of the Digital Navigator program that we had this year that was very successful. We were very excited about having that person at Chute Park. And I'm really excited to share that we have just figured out that thanks to a tiny smidgen of ARPA funding remaining that needs to be spent by the end of this year, we are going to be able to hire 2 digital navigators next year. So we'll have 1 in each library to help us support that continued work with computer support for patrons in the spaces. And I want to call out the function that libraries serve as an important third space. So there's this concept of home and work being the first and second spaces, and the third spaces being every place else in the community where people can gather and be present. And there's an acknowledgement that there are very few spaces left in the community anymore that are free to be at, and you can be there regardless of who you are. And we're really proud to be one of those third spaces. And so that's certainly a function that is primary to a lot of our patrons. And we have meeting rooms that are heavily used by patrons. And I want to call out the change that we made last year to our meeting room policy. You all approved that change to policy, which made our meeting rooms free. Most of them, the event room is the only room that now requires a fee, but all of the rest of our meeting rooms are free. And the result of that change was that our meeting room utilization rate jumped from 45 to 65%. That's a significant bump in a less than 1 year, I think it's been since we actually changed that. So that's a huge increase. I think it really illustrates how important these spaces are for people in the community. And it's a good example of how a small policy change can really support equitable access. And that's something that's important to us. Another function of that third space concept is that we provide a lot of support, of course, for our houseless patrons. And days like today are a good reminder of that. We serve as a cooling space or a warming center when extreme weather hits. There have been times, it wasn't called up today, but there have been times when the Shute Park Library has served as an official warming center for extreme weather or cooling center in those extreme weather events. And we're proud to also provide that space. And then in addition to the physical space, we provide things like notary service, which has been increasingly popular with our patrons, and an art gallery and display spaces in both of our libraries, which we typically try to have as a space that's really promoting local artists. And the Warrior Women exhibit that we recently held was a very good example of that. Local photographer bringing her work out and having a really great opportunity to share that with the community in our space. Programming is the next thing that a lot of folks think about when they think about the library, and this is something that we really strive to offer for learning and enrichment for all ages. I'm sure you're aware of story times and summer reading, some of those easy programs that we do, not easy, large programs that we do, well-known programs that we do for our whole community. We also offer things like a teen theater troupe and kids science programs. We also have a lot of adult programming, so book clubs and makerspace programs and other kinds of learning options for adults in the community. Many of those are things like English classes and citizenship programs that are helping support recent arrivals to our community. And many of those are also available in Spanish, and story times are available in several other programs or languages as well. I want to focus a little bit on some of the partnerships that we have that extend the programming and the reach that we have. Internally, we partner a lot with parks. So we have our Library on the Loose goes out and has a wide array of events throughout the summer. We partner a lot with the Roland Rec and Wetlands on Wheels to make sure that we have some really fun programming out there in all points in the community during the summer. The digital literacy workshops that we did earlier this year were a good example of partnering with Highlight and the Senior Center, where we connected with both of them and shared with their audiences, and were able to extend the reach of our programming through those connections. And then we also work with some partnerships in the community that help us with our programming. So Portland State University's School of Education supported the development of an inclusive storytime program that's been really popular with families with children with special needs. So.
Hey, Tammy.
Yeah.
I was taken through some of the inclusive programming and how it works, and I thought it was fantastic. So I just want to say thanks to you and your staff for adding that.
Thank you. I'm glad that you got a chance to experience that. Another key area of work for us, of course, is outreach and community engagement. You can see the Library on the Loose crew there, making sure that folks know that the library is for everyone. This area helps us learn about the community needs and connect to them and be present outside of our library buildings. The Library on the Loose is one part of that, doing all the things that they do in the summertime and throughout the year in various events. But we also have outreach and partnership connections and relationships with the school district and others. We have staff that go out and visit a variety of community agencies to try to build connections and relationships with them and the people that they serve. A good example of that in the last couple of years is the Student Library Card Program that we created to allow HSD students to use their student ID as a library card, so they have access to our materials just a little easier for them. So in this slide, I want to introduce the work groups and the way we've structured ourselves and talk a little bit about our staffing and give you a chance to meet the senior team leadership that we've got here sitting behind me. So starting with the Access Department, and Access is led by Elizabeth Lopez over here. Access is the department that is responsible for collection, development, and management. So they purchase, catalog, manage all of the physical materials that you see in our spaces. They also deal with all the materials movement, getting things within our libraries and between our library and the WCCLS buildings. And they're also responsible for the novel branches and the tiny branches and all the collection management that all of those require. Connect is our next work area, and this actually has two managers because we have two buildings and one manager for each of them. So Stacy Johnson is manager for our Brookwood location, and Maggie Carrillo Sotomayor is the manager for the Shute Park Library. Connect is the area that's responsible for operations and public service. They're the people that you see most if you come into a library and they're working at the service desk. They manage our staffing and service model, including the services that we provide in the collaboratories, and they manage our customer service policies and procedures at the heart of what we do in the daily operations. Next up is Explore, which is led by Linda Osuna. And Explore is the team that does community engagement, outreach, and programming for us, and they also oversee the volunteer program. And last but not least, Admin, which is Karen Muller's department. And we think of them as kind of an internal services department for the library. So they're all primarily staff facing and supporting staff with recruitment, onboarding, hiring, training, technology, data analysis, and then they're our finance liaison for managing the budget and all of that. I want to highlight up at the top of each of these columns here the breakdown of staff. You can see the numbers there, but I want to emphasize the fact that we have kind of a unique arrangement with part-time and flex staff here that not all city departments have. So for each area, you can see the full-time contingent of staff, and then we've got part-timers. And unlike some of the other departments that have seasonal part-time staff, we have part-timers who have been with us for many, many years at part-time. That's where they prefer to be. And so the staff that you see here are not temporary staff. They are long-term part-timers. We also utilize flexibly staffed folks or subs that you could think of to fill gaps in schedule needs for vacations and illnesses and things like that. So that's the arrangement of staff for each of the departments there. And then finally, if you're going to learn about us, you need to learn about WCCLS. The library is a member library of the Washington County Cooperative Library Services. WCCLS is a department of Washington County. They partner with the 16 member libraries that are operated locally by cities and nonprofits, and they provide a number of resources for us. So they are the ones who provide all of our digital collections. So our ebooks and other downloadable materials all come to us from WCCLS. They also provide online resources, some of those things like database subscriptions. Some of those are funded elsewise, like from the state library, but they're typically coming to us through some arrangements with WCCLS. They also provide the courier service that moves materials between the libraries, and that's pretty critical for our patrons because it gives them the flexibility to pick something up here and drop it off there, and it doesn't matter where they are. They can always get access to all of the materials in all 16 libraries. That's via the courier that they provide for us. They also provide a lot of our technology. So the Wi-Fi in our buildings, the public computers and the software on those computers, the library catalog that all of us use to manage our materials, all of those are provided by and managed by WCCLS. They also provide some outreach services. So there's a program of delivery for homebound patrons. That's something that WCCLS staff take care of for the entire county. And they coordinate certain programs for us like summer reading. And lastly, they distribute funding to member libraries. And I will talk to you about that a little bit more in a later slide.
Tammy, I wanted to share a little quick story. I ran into a resident recently with her daughter who's preparing to go into junior high, and she literally stopped me off the street to say how much she enjoys the program, the WCCLS, because she can't believe the services where she can look for a book, have it in a different city within the county, and have it delivered to a library of her choice. She said she wouldn't make it through the summer if it wasn't for our library services.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, we definitely know that that flexibility is very much appreciated by all of our patrons. So next up, I want to talk a little bit about the oversight and outside financial support that the library enjoys, starting with the library board. And I will call out Katie Ryan, library board member here, joining us tonight for some moral support. So the library board, of course, is our community representatives, and they provide oversight for us, reviewing and recommending our policies to this council for approval. They also have responsibility, of course, as advocates for us, and so they're our biggest cheerleaders. They are often also helping us with events and special projects. They sometimes step in and help us with interviews for key staff roles or selecting new board members for the future, and in building relationships in the community. So we are very grateful for the support that they provide for us. We get some additional financial support from two entities. On the left, the Friends of the Hillsboro Public Library. When you go to a book sale at the library, and I hope you do if you haven't had a chance yet, go to one of their fantastic sales. They hold sales at the library. They're at the county fair. They're at the Hive down here downtown. They do a ton of book sales. All of those, or most of them, are donated items or items that are retired from library use. And they sell all of them and bring that money back in to support us and what we do. They have made some major contributions over the years to various building projects. Most notably, I think they are responsible for the Brookwood Children's Area and the build out of that initially when that building was created. They also paid to have the coffee court installed, which we are, I swear, working on getting revitalized in the next year, trying to bring that back online. And then they provide some programmatic support for us in Hillsboro Reads and summer reading and other programs. The Library Foundation of Hillsboro, on the other hand, gets their funding from individual donations, from businesses, from charitable foundations, and the special events that they provide. And they've also given major contributions in the past. They raised $1 million to build the Brookwood Library when that was first put in. And then they also have raised some money for completion and renovation for both buildings over the years. And they also provide some programmatic support for things like the story walks. They've provided special collections for us. Last year, we brought a request to create a Ukrainian collection, and they were able to support that and fund that for us, and other kinds of programming as well. And I can't talk about support for the library without calling out our volunteers. We have volunteers who last year provided more than 20,000 hours of volunteer time to the library, which is immense. And those are folks who help us manage materials. They make sure our events run smoothly and safely. They help us complete special projects like weeding and shifting our collections. They do pretty much anything we can drum up to ask of them. They come through like champions, and it's great. So all of those, the library board, the friends, the foundation, the volunteers, we're very grateful to have such a great span of support from all these community members. So now I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing now and how we're planning for our future in the moment. That's kind of a rundown of what we've got going on now. And I want to say that we have a really great foundation to build on. We're planning for the future, but we're starting from a really good place. We have a phenomenal staff and volunteers. We have strong support from city leadership, from this council and past councils. And we have the respect of our peers in Washington County and beyond who see Hillsboro as a driver of innovation and creative library service. That's a really great place to start. I want to acknowledge that this library has been through a lot in the last 5 years. They've had 3 different directors since 2020. They've provided service through a pandemic that fundamentally changed how we operate. There's lingering cultural changes in the world around us that have really, frankly, made it very hard to provide public service sometimes. And these folks are still doing it. And while employees have made it clear to us that they are weary of change, they're also really eager to have a well-defined vision and a roadmap for the future and what to do next. Last year was my first year on the job. And so I made an intentional choice for that year to be a little bit of an organizational pause to just get to know people and come in and build trust and learn what was needed. But now we're moving into the next year. So we're leaning into some culture work, some staff engagement, some leadership development, all things that are aligned with the city's values and goals around staff employee health and well-being. And a key part of that is leaning into this strategic planning process that is now underway to help us create a 5-year strategic plan. We are working with a steering committee to get this going, and that committee has representatives from the library, from the Parks Department, from Economic and Community Development, as well as from HSD, Adelante Mujeres, Community Action, Portland State University, and some individual community members with a variety of connections out to different points in the community. So we've got a really great group working to guide the process with us in conjunction with a consulting firm called Library Strategies that's kind of overseeing for us. We are currently in the data gathering phase there. And so the QR codes and the link up on the screen there are for the community survey that is now live through August 3rd. I would love it if you will share this widely with your networks to bring that out to anyone you can. It is, as you can see, in 5 languages, and we do have responses so far in all 5 languages. I'm very excited. On the first day alone, we had more than 300 survey responses in all of these languages. So that's really exciting to see. That is one piece of our community engagement. We are also working in this to have a series of focus groups in English and Spanish with some selected members of the community, and some one-on-one interviews that will be done with the consultants. And again, a selected group of folks that were nominated by those steering committee members to put together a plan that really includes a lot of community feedback. They've also taken feedback from the staff and from the library board, and we'll put that all together along with some data about comparable libraries around the country, data about our library use. So lots of information going into this process that we hope will bring us to a plan that will really help us move forward in the next 5 years. We expect to have a draft plan in late September or early October with a final plan and a first-year implementation plan ready in November so that we can start launching this plan in January of 2026.
When was the last strategic plan done?
It expired in 2021.
That's what I
think
thought,
it was
okay.
2018 to 21, if I remember correctly.
Okay,
But then, of
yeah.
course, transitions and pandemics and all that just sort of left it.
Yeah. So on my term on the board, we never did one. We talked about it a lot and then we had a pandemic. So
Yeah,
we pushed
right.
it aside. So like, it's been a minute since we've done one of these. So
Exactly.
that's
Which,
exciting.
like I said, I think that's why staff are so eager for it, because
Yeah.
they're well aware that, it's been several years now without it. And with all this transition, it's just time to have a
Totally.
solid direction.
Yeah. Thank you.
So while we are planning for our future internally, WCCLS is also planning for its future through the Funding and Governance Project. This is a very long, ongoing project. We started this with meetings, I think, last spring. So we've been over a year now that we've been in this. And when I say we, I'm talking about a team from WCCLS, a team from Marina and Company, which is the consultants that are leading that process, the policy group in WCCLS, which is all of the library directors from all of the partner libraries, and the executive group there, the executive board, which includes leadership from all of the cities and partners there. So Simone is our exec board member for WCCLS. And the process overall has the 2 goals on the left there: to improve service consistency and equity across the county, and to support community needs by creating a library system with a fiscally sustainable future. I'm sure you're all aware of the county's financial situation at the moment, and so that certainly plays a big role in why this is a necessary process, recognizing that our current numbers don't match up in terms of spending and revenue, and I'll show you a slide on that in a little bit. On the right are the phases that we've gone through in the process so far. So we spent some time data gathering around our current service levels, our total expenditures, trying to understand what our current state was and understand what the total spending to support the overall system was. Then we moved into talking about base library service levels and thinking if we're going to create equity across the system, if we're trying to make sure that every member of the Washington County area has similar resources and services available to them at their libraries, we need to know what the base level for that is going to be. So we spent some time establishing what that is. I will say Hillsboro already provides more than that base level that has been determined by that group. We're currently working on developing the funding formula process, which, as you can imagine, is a pretty complex one and has a lot of competing interests in a space where we don't have any extra resources to offer. So that's some complicated conversations happening right now, but that's in the mix. A part of this has also been redefining or confirming the service boundaries that we have. So each library has an established geographic area that's officially assigned to it as the service boundary. That has implications not only in where we provide service in terms of outreach and whatnot, it also gets tied to the funding we receive from the state, which is linked to the number of patrons we serve. So those are, again, complicated conversations to have with all the partners in the room, trying very hard to think at a system level, but obviously having our own priorities locally with what we need to accomplish. And then as this process goes on, it will eventually move into having some intergovernmental agreements that guide all of this, because the next step is looking at the governance of the group and whether there are rules and processes that we need to change about how we operate. And all of that will be brought to councils for movement up to the county board, who's the ultimate decision maker on a lot of these things. One key outgrowth of that process for us has been this move towards collection centralization. So as we talked about in the very early stages of the funding and governance process, what we spent as a collective, as a group, on all of the different things that we do, one of the things that we couldn't deny was that we had a lot of redundancy in the area of collection management. And I will define when I talk about collection management, that is the process we use to select, purchase, catalog, label, and otherwise prepare the items that we buy to get them out on the shelf and in the catalog for patrons to be able to find. There's a lot of work that has to go into that process right now, and currently it's being done independently by every one of the 16 member libraries, which, as you can imagine, means there's a lot of redundancy and a lot of things being done in multiple places that could be done more efficiently in a joint way. So the process that we're working towards here is that in 2027, we're working on a plan to create a centralized collection management process where all of that work would move to a smaller number of staff doing it at WCCLS on behalf of all of the member libraries. That is consistent with how other large library systems are managed. I come from Hennepin County, which is Minneapolis and the cities around it in Minnesota, and that system does this just fine. It's the way they've operated for years. Most large libraries do. But this is a little more complicated because, of course, we have 12 different communities here that have different interests, different community needs, and are careful about wanting to preserve their own level of autonomy in that process. So there's a lot that we have not yet worked out about how we're going to make this transition. But 2027 means we've got a good long lead time to give us time to develop that process. So the plan for this transition is that we'll have an RFP out, the county will have an RFP out this fall to invite a consultant to come in and help guide us through a process over the course of 2026 to get us to something that we can begin implementation on in early 2027 with a goal of having by the next biennium, July 1st, having something in place. Locally, what this means is that we will have some staff positions cut, but I'm grateful to say that we do not have necessary layoffs. So we have enough time and enough wiggle room in the size of our staffing to be able to absorb the people that are in the positions that will be cut into other vacant positions between now and then. And we have a process that we've just spent the last couple of months working with our union to navigate a process for that. And we have that in place now. So we'll begin doing that over the next couple of years.
Tammy, on here where it says expected to save approximately $4 million system-wide, is that annually or per 5?
Annually.
Okay.
Yeah, and that number's a little fluid. You know, that's kind of a early math version. We're looking at actually revising that now that we've been into this for a while and we've got a little better sense of exactly what this is going to look like. But that's the estimate across the county.
Okay. And Tammy, do you see those savings in just the ability to manage collections, or is it also personnel savings that you see that?
I mean, the bulk of that 4 million, like with anything, staffing is always the most expensive part of what we do. And so most of that is staffing, but there is a savings too, where we will no longer be buying as much for our collection because WCCLS will be buying that on our behalf. So the expenditure shifts to them. Okay, I want to give you just a little bit of state and national library context. Some of this you may not be aware of what's happening and changes that the administration has made that are potentially going to have an impact on our library in the future. So federal funding for libraries primarily comes from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, or IMLS. It is the only federal agency that is targeted at providing funding for libraries. An executive order earlier this year targeted the IMLS, and the proposed budget that's coming up for debate in the next couple of months provides only shutdown funding for IMLS. So the plan is to eliminate this agency. The state of Oregon joined a number of other states that are suing the administration over that funding, and that case continues to move through the courts, so it remains to be seen what that will do. In the meantime, the House Appropriations Subcommittee that manages these things will begin their budget markup next Monday, and if they do not reauthorize the IMLS and the LSTA that created it, the IMLS will be eliminated. That funding is not something that we directly receive right now, but it trickles down to us via the state library and other sources. And the IMLS provides LSTA, Library Services and Technology Act. That's what that was from. It provides LSTA grants to libraries that we could have in the future, been a candidate for. If those go away, that opportunity is gone. And that was the only stream of federal funding for libraries. The state impact of this, like I said, we don't receive that funding, but the state library does. They have received funding for the current budget year, but after July 2026, they don't know what's going to happen for them. And federal funding is about 25% of their budget. Eliminating IMLS and that funding to the state library would change our summer reading program. They currently provide the iRead structure that all of our libraries use for that. That would no longer be accessible to us. The Oregon Battle of the Books would potentially be impacted, and that's a program that's been very popular with our families. Now, only a piece of their funding comes from the state library, but they may still feel an impact that would need to be absorbed somewhere else. Online databases for students. There's a suite called the Gale suite of resources. And if you were a child back in the day and you used an encyclopedia, this is sort of an updated version of that, an online version. And there's a very extensive suite of various aspects of this, different kinds of resources. Those resources are expensive and they are provided by the state library and would not be able to, there's no way we would be able to fund them by ourselves. And WCCLS has said they would not also have the funding to provide them. So that suite of resources would just be gone for us. The state library also provides a lot of employee training resources for us, and they have said that those would be potentially at risk if they lose their funding. And then the state library staff, they have 12 people who advise and support our staff in a variety of ways, and those positions would be at risk if this funding goes away. So not a direct impact to us, but certainly something that our community could feel if that funding is gone. So speaking of funding, I thought we should go through this slide of how we are funded. We are very grateful to have strong city support here, and you can see that with 61% of our funding coming straight from the city's general fund. 38% comes from WCCLS, and a 1% down there comes from grants and donations. That's primarily the Friends and Foundation. I will say it's 1%, and it doesn't look like a lot, and it isn't a lot in the overall scheme of things, but it is a significant portion of our materials and services budget. So it is an important part of our funding stream, even though it looks small on the graph. And then I broke down on the right there, the county general fund and the library levy, the countywide levy, the breakdown of those things. So about 15% of our funding comes from the library levy, which, as the note there says, is expiring next year. So that will be on the ballot in November. And this is a little bit more about that. So the current levy rate for the library is 22 cents per thousand of AV. That has not kept pace with the increased expenses. Like everything else, our costs go up, our staffing goes up, and that has not continued to grow with the property tax changes or the lack of change in property tax rates. So the levy replacement will be on the ballot. The county is looking at this moment to seek to increase that to 37 cents. That's a 15-cent increase. That replacement levy would sustain current levels of service. And county leadership is going to come and present to you more information about that in the coming weeks. I think they're working on scheduling something right now. The graph on the right just gives you a sense of the breakdown of the funding for the overall WCCLS system and how it's split between the county general fund contribution, the library levy, the current levy, and the levy increase there. And then the line up at the top is outlining the projected preliminary costs for the base service level that we talked about a few minutes ago. And the assumptions are down there in the small print.
I have a question. So
So the replacement levy would sustain current levels of service. Is that taking into account the
collection centralization.
no, sorry.
Oh,
The federal impact?
I don't know that this, again, this doesn't have, the federal impact is unknown yet. And what impact that would have specifically on WCCLS, we don't know what that will be until it happens.
Okay.
The things that I mentioned from the state library are what they're anticipating, that if we get these cuts, these are the things we would have to cut from our
Even
services.
even with the levy passing at 0.37, we might still have to cut those things.
Yes, because
Right.
those are totally separate.
Yeah.
Yep, completely separate funding
Alright.
streams.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is just county general fund and levy combination and how our total funding comes for the system, not for the Hillsboro Library.
Would you know how much the levy would need to be to include the items that might be cut if the IMLS funding goes away?
I don't know. I don't know that.
Yeah, the work that the county's done hasn't looked at that yet.
Right.
And they worked hard to find an increase. Like, how much do they go for? And I think the hard sell on this one is that there's an increase, but same services. And we're all dealing with it. We're all paying, for example, more for eggs, but we don't get 13 eggs now.
Right.
We still get 12.
Yep.
Right. And that's it's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
Rob's
You know.
mad all of a sudden about that.
But the county went back and forth on how much they should increase. There was a lot of conversation over that. Just so you know, the 15 cents wasn't arbitrary.
Yeah.
They also did a lot of polling. So in January and in May, and they're working on another round that I think will happen in the next couple of weeks here of polling of likely voters. And the support for that so far has been good. I think the numbers were somewhere in the 60-something range of percent support. And that was even with some test questions that were negative. It was even with the recognition that the public safety levy will also be on the ballot at the same time. And even with that, support was pretty consistently positive. So we're hoping that nothing dramatic changes in the next few months, but another round of polling will potentially influence that. And I think the board has been considering what other options they might have if that starts to change or something dramatic changes in the economy that makes them feel like that's less possible. There is also the possibility of going out for a levy in the spring if this one were to fail.
Tammy, is there a chart, or could you put one together similar to the one we're showing on this slide, but just for this City of Hillsboro library system? I'm just sort of interested to see what the City of Hillsboro has contributed during these, in the past, not going forward, I guess, in the past.
Okay.
And whether or not it's become a bigger portion of our income than the levy money or the county WCCLS money.
It has always been a bigger portion of the levy funding, and it has been an increasingly larger portion of our total. You know, when I look at numbers a few years ago on this chart, the city's contribution was in the 50-something% range, and it's gone up.
Right. And
I could get a
to
chart
me,
for that,
thinking
though.
of that way is like to put us back in balance to where we were with the county levy city contribution. If nothing else, it would show how an increase in the tax rate sort of puts us back into balance with where we were a few years ago, maybe. It may not. I don't know what the data is going to show, but from what you're telling me, it sounds like that might be the trend it would show.
Yep. Yeah, I can get that for you.
Can I jump in? Because I had a question about this too. Because I remember just a few years ago, this slide, specifically the city and the county were a bit closer to 50-50, 51-49, like closer than we are here. With the upcoming changes at WCCLS and them taking on the collection, centralizing the collection, do we think this is going to get more evened out if they claim the books are part of their collection, or is it going to swing more? You know, is the city going to pick up more of that? And this may be a Robbie question. This may be an unknown question. This may be she's on the library board and why does she ask questions?
I think I haven't calculated those numbers. Certainly the reduction in costs that we will have from that change, I would think would be big enough to make an impact on this, but I don't know how big of an impact it would be. We could calculate that. I just don't have it.
Maybe the only thing I'll add, I agree with Tammy. I do think that, the fact that those 8 positions that we're eliminating based on the centralization, that's where the savings comes from. So we will see some savings. I think you'll see that in this. And also I would point out, Tammy mentioned this earlier, but part of this is our own choice because we are purposefully deciding to offer a higher level of services for our Hillsboro libraries. We offer more hours than some libraries do. I think we are maybe better staffed than some libraries, and that's by design. We consider libraries to be one of our core services, and we're proud of that. And so this, at least a few years ago, I believe the Hillsboro libraries were more funded by the city. I'm not going to say this correctly. We fund our libraries to a much higher degree, percentage-wise, than most other libraries in WCCLS. So again, that's a choice. We've always had the support from the council, which has been a wonderful to have. So, but as you see, it's getting worse and worse each year. It's getting really hard to keep up. And so hopefully the changes with the WCCLS levy will help, so we can continue to offer those same levels of services.
Just a couple of things for me. I'm really happy to hear that you're doubling down on the digital navigator program. As I told you, I think top 10 social issue that we're going to have to fix is the digital divide. So really happy to hear that you're investing in that. And then second, library people are some of my favorite people. Can we take a picture before we all go home?
Of course.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Thank you. Yeah, we're very excited about that. I'm glad that the council continues to see that as a priority. We certainly see that need in our libraries all the time. So I was really glad when that ARPA funding came around and we were able to make it stretch to fit 2 positions. I hope down the road that we can continue building that out and think a little differently about how our permanent staff positions might support that. That's a longer term question, but I'll probably be talking to you again for the next biennium about that. So.
Any other questions?
That's it for me. Are there any?
All right. Well, let's take that photo.
I actually do have a question.
Okay.
Rob. Really?
Yeah.
Sabit is too.
I see we have at least 3 more minutes.
Okay, let's do it.
So 2 questions. One is, are you looking to do anything in South Hillsboro? I know it's been talked about for 2 decades since they could put it on the books. And number 2, looking at your different distribution points, the library on the loose, the novel branch, and the tiny branches, what do you see for circulation with those options?
Okay, so first for South Hillsboro, yes, we have a plan. I thought about putting it in here, but I wasn't sure I'd have time on my agenda. But I'm very excited about this. It's still very much in the works, early stages, but we are hoping to have a space right next to the new fire station that's going in South Hillsboro. There's a little spot of land that we are navigating for a small self-service library point there. We're just working on design for this. It's very early, but our plan there would be to have an unstaffed space or an asynchronously staffed space where patrons could pick up holds. They'd have a very small browsing collection, but that's it. There's no computers to use. There's no other reason to stay. You come and grab some materials to just be able to take what you need, and return items that you've already checked out. And then staff would come periodically to restock those items just like they restock the novel branch or any other hold shelf. That would give us a foothold down there and give us a connection to that community. Long term, I have other ideas about what we might be able to do down there with the community center next door, but those are a long ways off. And in the meantime, this is a place where we would at least be able to extend a small pocket of service to that part of the community. And then you were asking about circulation, right? So are you thinking just circulation trends in general or specifically with those service points?
Sort of just with those service points, what are you seeing? Is it robust? I know part of it is probably outreach is why you're doing it as well, not just circulation.
Right.
I get that and to be seen and everything.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious what kind of circulation you get for those.
Okay. So the library on the loose really, I mean, they do have some materials. They're more about giveaways than circulation, correct? So they're not actually checking out materials. They're giving things for free when they go out to parks, events, and whatnot. And the tiny branches are really like a little free library. So those are also giving away materials for free. At the novel branch, Elizabeth, can you help me out with where we're at on circulation?
Yeah. Thank goodness.
Whichever.
Just press the little gray button so we can all hear you, please.
Yeah, so that's been a really great partnership to have that location inside the Hidden Creek Rec Center. And so we are sorry. So we are seeing more increased circulation in that service point, especially as we've been kind of experimenting with the types of materials that are available off of that location. More recently, we've been adding more outdoor equipment, which the Hidden Creek staff have told us that's kind of where the demand is. So we've been adding things like hammocks for use with the poles outside, ping pong sets, paddle boards, things like that. So yeah, and I think we're still working on building more awareness of that location as well. So
Are there numbers?
oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, so that service point, I think it can house around 200 items in total. More or less depending on the size of each of the items in there. But right now, as a service point, it does about, I want to say like maybe 30 to 40 circs per month for items that are checked out. And that doesn't include renewals. That's a separate percentage. But yeah.
Councilor Embry?
I'm good.
Oh, you're good. All right. Any other questions?